Hello everyone, welcome back to another chest openings video. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching all of you how to destroy unsuspecting Sicilian Najdorf players with the very strong Fischer-Sozin Attack. Now, before we get further into the video, please smash that like button, and if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and turn the notifications on. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. The Sicilian Najdorf opens after the moves pawn to e4, c5, knight to f3, d6, pawn to d4, c captures d4, knight captures d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, and pawn to a6. This position is a very common position in the Sicilian Najdorf, as after the move a6, this opening is known as the Sicilian Najdorf. The Fischer-Sozin attack begins after the move bishop to c4, after which the most common reply from black is pawn to e6. Now here already, just on move 7, white has two options. One is to go bishop to b3, which is the most common, and the other is to castle. Now, although bishop to b3 is the most common, what I suggest that all of you guys castle. Now, this may seem like it's going off of opening principles, but let me just explain to you why you should castle. Here's the thing. If you play bishop to b3, black is most likely going to play b5 either way. And then you castle. However, if you castle first, what you're actually doing is that you're setting a trap for your opponent, because in this position, if black does not push b5, and if they play the move knight to c7, they're actually completely lost. This is because of the amazing sacrifice that happens after bishop captures on e6. Now, first of all, I want you to notice how this cannot take place if you would have played bishop to b3 first. And this can only work if you castle first and then they play knight to d7. After bishop captures on e6, f captures on e6, and knight captures on e6, you might be thinking that white just blundered an entire piece, or a piece for 2 pawns. However, in this position, white can gain a great attack after queen to b6, knight to d5, knight captures d5, pawn captures d5, knight to c5, and knight to g5. I've played this personally in many of my games, and all of those games have been wins for me. Now, it may not seem like white has much of an advantage. However, let me just show you how, or one possible way in which white can easily win the game. After bishop to e7, a common developing move, there's queen to h5 check, g6, and queen to h6. If black decides to capture the knight, then white can continue with queen to g7, rook to f8, bishop captures g5, threatening checkmate on e7, rook to f7, stopping this checkmate, rook to e1 check, bishop to e6, blocking. Now, this is pretty much the only move that black has, as if black goes to king to d7, then just queen captures on f7 wins with checkmate. So after bishop to e6, as you can see, white has already regained its material. Knight captures on e6 and pawn captures on e6. Sorry, not pawn captures. Pawn captures is a bad move, sorry about that. Queen to g8 check. After the rook blocks, then you recapture the knight on e6. And as you can see, in this position, it's actually checkmate. And this is just one way that after bishop captures on e6, white can easily win the game. So, this is why I suggest that you castle first instead of following the main line of bishop to b3. As after you castle, if they don't play knight to d7 and they play pawn to b5, you're literally in the exact same position as before. After bishop to b3. Now, in this position, they could go knight to d7, and then you just continue on with development. After rook to e1, knight to c5, Now, this idea of knight to d7 to c5 is actually an extremely common idea that you'll face when you're playing the Sozin attack. However, if your opponent does this, let me just assure you that you've already completely won the game. Because if your opponent goes knight to d7 to c5, and this idea was actually popularized by Garry Kasparov when he was playing against the Sozin attack. However, what he didn't realize is that this position is actually completely winning for white. And it may not seem like it, but the powerful bishop to d5, bishop sacrifice, completely wins the game on the spot. The point being that the bishop is attacking the rook, and if the bishop isn't captured or the rook doesn't move, then white instantly just captures the rook and is up in exchange. Now, in this position, black has a couple moves. They could either move the rook, block with bishop to b7, or just capture the bishop. I'm going to be covering all three of these. Now, first of all, what happens if black plays rook to b8, just moving the rook out of the way? Well, what happens after this is that you play knight to c5, forking the two pieces, the queen and the rook. And after the queen moves, you simply just capture the rook. And in this position, whatever black plays, whether they capture your bishop or they capture your knight, you still won the exchange. If they were to capture your bishop, then you just do pawn captures on d5 with check, a discover check from the rook. And after the bishop blocks, you simply just move your knight back to c6, keeping the exchange. Now, if they don't take your bishop and they decide to take your knight instead, all you have to do is play bishop to c6 check, bishop to d7 blocking, and you just exchange the bishops, and you're up an entire exchange. As you can see, this is completely winning for white. Well, now you might be wondering, okay, so rook to b8 doesn't work. What if they play bishop to b7, just blocking the bishop's influence on the rook, as the knight protects the b7 square? Well, in this position, you play the calm but powerful pawn to b4, simply attacking the defender of the bishop on b7. Here, they have two options. Either they could just take your bishop with their pawn or their bishop. If they play e takes d5, all you have to do is you take their knight, and after they play a move like bishop to e7, as they're trying to castle out of the rook's influence, you just recapture the pawn on d5, and after they play a move like castle, and these are all the best moves for black, by the way, you play a move like pawn to c6 with a completely dominating position, being a pawn up, and also dominating the queen side with your d and c pawns. Well, now you might be wondering, okay, so obviously pawn takes d5 doesn't work. What if they play bishop takes d5? Well, if bishop takes d5, you recapture the bishop, not the knight. As by recapturing the bishop, the pawn actually attacks the d6 square along with the rook. After the knight moves out of harm's way, you capture the pawn on e6 twice, and you capture with the knight. After this, as you can see, their queen is under attack, and a possible continuation follows like this. Queen to b6, knight to d5, knight takes d5, queen takes d5, and rook to c8, as the queen from d5 actually attacked the rook on a8. Then knight captures on g7, king to d7, because it is a double check. After knight captures on d7, the rook and the knight are both attacking the king. So the king has to move to d8, knight to e6 check, king to e8, queen to h5 check, king to e7, bishop to g5 check, knight blocks, knight to d4 with another discovered check on the king, king to d8, and queen to f7. There's absolutely no way for black to stop either rook to e8 checkmate or knight to e6 checkmate. So in this position, black is completely lost. The game which I just showed you is actually a game played between two grandmasters. Well, okay, so obviously the move bishop to b7 also doesn't, bishop to b7 also doesn't work. Well, what else does black have? Well, the most obvious reply is pawn takes d5. However, this loses on the spot with pawn takes e5 with the discovered check on the king, bishop to e7 blocking the check, and knight to c6 attacking the queen. Queen to b6, rook captures on e7. As you can see, you actually regained your piece right away. And after this, not only did white regain his piece, but now black's king can't castle either way. The king has to go to f8, and after this, white is in just a completely destroying position, as the black rook on h8 cannot go anywhere. The king is stuck on the f8 and g8 squares. Black has not developed either his light squared bishop or his rook. And this actually gives white a completely destroying attack. After they bring their bishop to, let's say, g5, the queen to e2. Not only this, but white is simply up a pawn in this position. So, as you can see, the powerful bishop to d5 can catch many players off guard, and it's a completely winning move. As if they don't move the rook, then you just win the exchange. And if they even if they block the attack on the rook or just move the rook, or even just take your bishop, you're completely winning. But you might be thinking, what if they don't do the knight to d7 to b5 idea, to c5 idea? Well, here's the thing with the Sozin attack. After rook to e1, many players, what they do is place a move like bishop to e7, just continuing on development. However, whenever you have a position like this in the Sozin attack, where their bishop is on e7, their knight is on d7, and they haven't castled yet, white already wins. So now this is a really important position to remember, as this is one of the main ideas in the Sozin attack. And the way that you take advantage of the bishop on e7 and the knight on d7 is by playing bishop takes e6, just like before. After pawn takes and knight takes e6, the queen is under attack and has to move to a place like queen to b6. After which, you can capture on knight takes g7, king to f7, and knight to f5. And in this position, white actually got 3 whole pawns for a piece. But not only that, the black's king cannot castle anymore. Along with this, black has a very weak, isolated d6 pawn, which white can take advantage of. In this position, white is winning. And this position can actually occur many times throughout the opening, where the bishop is on e7 and the knight is on d7 and the white king hasn't castled. They don't even have to have played b5 for this to happen, which is crazy. However, let's just go back a move. Let's see how a normal game would continue. After you castle and b5 and bishop to b3, a normal game continues bishop to e7, rook to e1, and again, as you can see, this position could arise after knight to d7, or even after bishop to b7, as the bishop leaves the protection of the e6 square. But a normal game would continue with black castling, white continuing with the move f3, black playing queen to c7, and developing their pieces as such. Now, in this position, this is a completely equal game, and this is what you should be prepared to play if you want to play the Sozin attack. Now, this opening is completely full of many, many traps and tricks to catch the unsuspecting Najdorf player off guard. Now, I'm not saying that you will win 100% of the time, but at least you will go into an equal middle game, such as this one. Both players have winning chances in this, but along with that, many Najdorf players who I've played against do not actually know what to do after bishop to c4. Many play moves such as after e6 and bishop to e7, knight to d7. They don't know that I can sack on e6. I highly recommend this opening, as not only does it give you a great attack, or possibly a great attack, but it doesn't leave you with any disadvantage, even if black knows how to play against it properly. So with that this is the end of my video, or my lesson on the Fischer-Sozin attack and how to destroy the Sicilian Najdorf player with this. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel to help out my channel. And other than that, if you have any other suggestions for any openings which I should cover in the future, please leave them in the comment section below. And please check out one of my previous videos, which will pop up on your screen right now. And other than that, thank you and have a nice day.